51 years after a taunt promised PARADICE, the code fell open and still the name did not appear. So what exactly did we catch? A file opens in the dark, paper whispering like a confession that refuses to finish its own sentence. Northern California, late 1960s. Freeways stretching like veins, newspapers thudding on doorsteps, a region about to learn a new voice. A voice that arrived as letters, ciphers, threats, and a signature that looked like a gun sight aimed at the entire city. Before the letters, there were headlights, a gravel turnout, and the first sudden silence. December 20th, 1968. Benicia, David Faraday, and Betty Lou Jensen never made it home. A cold wind carried the echo of questions no one could answer. The investigation began with footprints of uncertainty and a map dotted with fear. July 4th, 1969, Vallejo, fireworks and sirens. Darlene Ferrin is killed. Mike Mageau survives long enough to mislead certainty and fuel obsession. 2 attacks, 2 cities, one unknown hand now writing its story in other people's nights. Then, August 1st, 1969, the killer writes to 3 newspapers, slicing a message into 3. Print or more will die. Each envelope carries a piece of a 408 symbol cipher and an introduction that will freeze newsrooms for years. This is the Zodiac speaking. Editors lean over type, debating moral math. Do we feed panic to starve violence or starve coverage and risk feeding something worse? Donald and Betty Harden, a schoolteacher and his wife, spend a weekend turning symbols into a confession with no name. The solved 408 says the thrill is control, the motive is theater, and the payoff is an afterlife crowded with slaves. He denies us identity, offering only ideology, a creed written in ciphers and fear. September 27, 1969, Lake Benicia, sunlight on water, picnic blankets, and a figure in a black hood stitched with that crossed circle. Brian Hartnell survives to remember the voice. Cecilia Shepard will not, yet even here, the killer chooses a spectacle over stealth. On the victim's car door, in black marker, he writes dates like headlines, a list of scenes in his own production. October 11, 1969, San Francisco, Paul Stine, a cab ride that was supposed to be a fare, becomes a stanza in a letter. Days later, a piece of Paul Stine's blood-stained shirt arrives at the Chronicle, a proof of life for a crime already complete. This is not just murder. It is a negotiation with the entire public square for attention and power. Witnesses remember a look that could be anyone's next-door neighbor, the kind of face that blends into bus stops and libraries. Police sketches circulate. Fear circulates faster because the killer has learned to work through the mail. The FBI steps in, not to claim the hunt but to decipher the theater, to make sense of the symbols that anchor the panic. The killer claims 37 victims. The official ledger confirms 5 dead, 2 wounded, and many millions unsettled. He is simultaneously visible and invisible, a broadcaster with no return address, a performer without a close-up. A new cipher arrives late in 1969, 340 symbols of zigzagging text that feel like a maze built to be admired, not escaped. The maze resists decades of hands, thousands of eyes, and the cold patience of machines. April 20th, 1970, another letter, "My name is," followed by 13 symbols that pretend to be a signature and behave like a dare. The 13 characters do not so much conceal a name as perform one, baiting a century that is only beginning to digitize obsession. Across the bay, across the years, thousands become caretakers of an absence, tending clues that refuse to grow into answers. Arthur Lee Allen's name rises and falls like tides. Promising facts evaporate under the heat of proof. Over 2,500 people pass through suspicion. None emerge as fact. Meanwhile, the symbol persists like graffiti on the city's collective memory, a circle crossed by an instinct we do not trust. What do you call a criminal who murders in real life and stages it again on the front page? A writer might call him an editor of fear, an author who edits the public mood with punctuation and deadlines. The 340 cipher becomes legend, a snow globe no one can shake into meaning, a museum of frustration behind glass years turn, and the case grows younger online as the rest of us age around it. In basements, libraries, and forums, amateur sleuths trade alphabets like baseball cards and sharpen intuition on impossible edges. Then December 2020 arrives with 3 names: David Orenchak, Jarl van Eyck, and Sam Blake. They feed the 340 into software and into their sleepless patients, teaching a machine to think like a showman who wrote crooked on purpose. The cipher breaks like ice, giving way not beneath a footstep, but beneath a rumor. The decoded message laughs first. Hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me, because taunts preserve the only certainty left. It continues, I am not afraid of the gas chamber, because PARADICE, misspelled on purpose, is a brand more than a place. It clarifies a TV hoax call was not him, reminding us the killer guarded authorship as carefully as he erased identity. There is no name inside, only the echo of performance and a tally of power. The FBI confirms the crack, and for a moment the timeline has a new star, a fresh pin in the map of unsolved certainty. But the mirror does not show a face. It shows another mirror. The 13 characters still wink like a locked door on a lit hallway. By now the case feels less like a hunt for a person and more like a hunt for a pattern that keeps adjusting our gaze. The killer wore a hood once, but mostly he wore prose. He held cities hostage not with force alone, but with choices: publish or panic, doubt or dread, silence or spectacle. Survivors' voices drift into the archive, human ballast against the killer's performance, reminding us that certainty is made of people first. The investigation sprawls across jurisdictional borders and ideological lines, a coliseum where proof must defeat rumor in front of a roaring crowd. What keeps a story alive longer than life? Perhaps it is the way an unsolved case teaches us to participate, to complete a narrative that refuses to finish itself. At Lake Benicia, the hood was a costume. In the letters, the symbol was a logo. In the ciphers, the theater became interactive. A killer who asked to be decoded trained us to stare at symbols and forget the ordinary ways that truth appears. And yet the ordinary never stopped knocking. The unglamorous ledger of 5 names, 2 survivors, and a neighborhood map of actual sorrow. The camera returns to the car door at the lake, marker bleeding dates as if to insist on authorship. The same insistence bleeds through the scrap of shirt, the clean cut of a brutal proof of life, the certainties we do not want. Amid all this, a question moves like a lantern through fog. If you solve the message but keep the messenger unknown, what have you solved? Midway through this file, you and I have to decide whether we are reading a case or rehearsing it. Did we catch a cipher, or did a cipher catch us? If you sat in that 1969 newsroom, palms on newsprint and a clock ticking, do you print the threat or refuse the stage? The crowd wants justice, the killer wants attention, and the editors must choose which appetite to feed first. Over time, we fed both, and the story grew stronger muscles than the case itself. The 2020 solution proves 2 things. The killer understood performance, and the audience did too. A television reference inside the 340 is less about alibi and more about time, an index card pinning the case to the age of broadcast. He wanted to be seen as current, an artist of fear who curated his own relevance. Today, the internet does the rest, complicating jurisdiction with enthusiasm and turning the archive into a participatory arena. The FBI's role in the background, assisting, analyzing, confirming, anchors the case in institutional gravity while the public floats toward speculation. Every few years, a new suspect appears with a flair for certainty and a shortage of proof. Meanwhile, the 13-symbol signature hums softly, unresolved, like a neon sign rattling after closing time. The pattern of taunting without revealing a name is not a glitch, it is the product. Consider the 408, solved quickly, no name. Consider the 340, solved decades later, still no name. Control was never about confession. It was about curation. He curated our attention the way museums curate artifacts, arranging proximity and scarcity to charge admission. That is why the symbol matters, not as a clue, but as a ticket stub. And that is why the numbers matter, not as a ledger of certainty, but as a cliffhanger the letters could keep refreshing. A final panorama of the timeline. Benicia, Vallejo, Lake Berryessa, San Francisco. 4 coordinates mapping a dread that radiated far beyond the evidence. 5 dead, 2 wounded, and a country that learned to read not just the news, but its own nerves. The case remains open, in the way that an unsolved crossword remains open. A puzzle that begins to solve the solver. Perhaps that is why PARADICE appears in the 340 like a brand promise, inviting us to labor forever for the killer's afterlife. Perhaps that is why the "my name is" letter laughs beneath its own brevity, shrinking the ultimate answer to a handful of shapes. And perhaps that is why we keep staring, because to walk away feels like letting the story finish itself without us. We return to the unsentenced question. If the name hides inside 13 marks, does the key exist, or is the key an idea we were meant to chase? A tape reel clicks to a stop, the room holds its breath, and somewhere a circle with a cross waits to be read again. The letters are still letters, the cipher is still theater, and the stage lights have not yet cooled. Who was he really, and what does it mean that we might never be allowed to know?